Welcome back to Breakfast Central. The Senate Committee on Public Accounts has probing major irregularities in the audited financial statements of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL. They say there's unverified receivables between 2017 and 2023, summing up to over 200 trillion naira. At the Senate's hearing on Wednesday, Committee Chairman Senator Aliyu Wadada criticized the lack of supporting documents for enormous legal and audit fees, calling the financial records troubling and contradictory. NNPCL's Chief Financial Officer Dapo Segun appeared before the committee but failed to address key discrepancies. The Senate has issued 11 queries to the company's finance team demanding full explanations within 1 week. While we wait to hear back from the NNPC in the next week, we're now joined by Professor of Petroleum Economics, Wumi Iledare, to discuss this development. Good morning, Prof. Thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, and good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. 200 trillion naira in unclear receivables reported by NNPCL for over 6 years. We were seeing no documentation for massive legal and audit-related payments. How did we get here, and how is this just been discovered in 2025?
Well, again, thank you. We're looking at 2017 to 2023. And if you look at in the United States, NNPC was of a public institution. And there is more or less a transparency and accountability issue. And then if you take your mind back to 2016 to 2018, that was some of the reason why there was need to have the industry reform. Transparency was a challenge at that particular time because NNPC was more or less like a cash cow of the federal government. Then fast forward, you have the PIA we call it PIB 2018B, which is actually the foundation of the current Chapter 2 of the PIA. We call it Governance and Institution Bill in that 2018. It was not signed by the president, but that was the basis. Now, NNPC, they moved from being a public institution to a commercial institution. And that's what we see in the last 2 or 3 years. They have become a little bit more transparent and accountable. What you saw before was fiscal responsibility, fiscal absence of fiscal transparency. And of course, you have the government and the National Assembly to blame. But not in the dispensation. They are trying to be accountable, transparent, and then to be fiscally responsible. So I would not like us to more or less sensationalize news, because NNPC has been the punching bag over the years, but they are evolving in trying to be commercial. Yes, they are basically still a public institution, but not a public agency, because the PI does not require them to submit what we call operational surplus anymore. Number 2, they are not submitted the budget to the National Assembly to approve. But they are not governed by the Fiscal Responsibility Act. But it's going to take a while. Nonetheless, they are still managing the oil and gas wealth of the nation. So the National Assembly still has the right to call them if they are doing anything that have impact on the national economy. So they are right, but I don't want us to sensationalize news. I'm not defending them, but I want things to be properly put in place to understand what is going on. 200 trillion naira is a lot of money, but there are 2 things we need to pay attention to: the joint venture cash call and the joint venture disbursement. Give them the benefit of the doubt as they emerge to become a commercial institution that they are supposed to be, keeping in mind that they are now governed by the Petroleum Industry Act, which we must allow to play its normal course. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about issues that will help them to be more accountable, transparent, and responsible in managing the national wealth.
I mean, that's why when we had this conversation, I mean, we couldn't have thought of any other person to bring on to break this conversation down other than you, sir. But I'd like us to look at this, and I would like your expertise in better explaining it the best way possible so that our viewers can get a glimpse and Nigerians can fully understand the weight of these headlines. When the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, was invited, I'm talking about Mr. Dapo Segun, he did go ahead before the Senate committee to state that 103 million and 107 trillion made up the joint venture cash calls that have been requested by JV operators, and don't forget to JV cash call payments by NNPCL. So we'd like you to do this for us. Please, can you explain to us the joint venture, how it applies to this case, the best way possible so that we can really fully understand the intent from the NNPCL and why this is making the news as well?
Well, thank you again. Let's look at the concept of petroleum fiscal arrangement, which is more or less of putting together the instrument for extracting petroleum rent. Now, when we talk about joint venture from a petroleum fiscal arrangement point of view, you are looking at a relationship between we call them the host government, which is the federal government of Nigeria, and the international companies. And joint venture then is a situation which, for the Nigerian case, which probably started in I think 1967, where the government owns 60% share or arrangement, and the international company on average 40%, until the government nationalized the British petroleum component of the Shell BP. So in Shell joint venture, the government has less than 60%. So on average in Nigeria, for a joint venture operation, if the cost of the business is $100, Nigerian government, through NNPC now that we have PIA, we have to put about $58 of every $100 spent to develop, produce, and operate the petroleum asset in Nigeria on a joint venture arrangement. When we look at the other aspect, we call it contractual agreement. That's the PSC. The government doesn't spend money, but the government surrender a portion of whatever oil that is produced to finance the exploration, development, production, and operation of a PSC. So that's the problem. So every year, there's what we call the Joint Operating Agreement Committee that will meet in the concessionary agreement that you have a joint venture participation with the government. NNPC is the one managing that arrangement on behalf of the government. And when we talk about cash call, if the government spends $200 million, I mean, if the joint venture operation committee spend $200 million, the government is supposed to pay the companies 58%, whatever money that is spent every year to develop joint venture assets in Nigeria. And that's a lot of money. Sometimes the government may not have the money. And that's why you get the idea of a joint venture cash call. And that's the become accumulated. And quite often it could be very significant amount of money. And recently I think the NNPC Limited, especially in the last 2 years, are doing their best to pay off some of the backlog. And so when you look at which is the report, I've not seen the report, but I'm just explaining the oil and gas accounting purposes. You have account receivables and you have account payable. Listen, I'm explaining for what you say.
Absolutely. You're doing very well. You're doing very well.
Yeah. So what you see is that you have account receivable, you have account payable. It is incorrect to add the two of them together as something that is missing. They are two different things. It's not less when you do capitalization, when you want to pay tax, and you are going to capital, you deduct it. But then when you are going to calculate your past surplus, you add it back to it. Listen, I'm not looking at the report, and I'm just explaining the concept to you. Sensationalize reporting too much. The presentation of the chief financial officer. And listen, if you are confronted the tendencies for you not to be able to explain yourself, so if you look at the dynamics of Nigeria, you have to be careful. But I think this is simple. Government owes the international company money because check the cash call. They have to pay. Unfortunately, the government is spending all the money that they make out of the oil industry. NNPC, in my opinion, is the chin bag instead of the National Assembly doing their work. I'm sorry to say, they are the ones who allow this. They compound 10 people to be in charge of ministerial portfolio without doing them. Then they have them to bow. We don't even have a substantive Minister of Petroleum who is supposed to be the driver of the oil and gas industry.
So you don't recognize, the president's position as the Minister of Petroleum in this case?
No, I don't want to divert. You can come back and talk about that later. I want to mention that in two conditions in the Constitution of Nigeria, as they look at all the posts in ministerial posts in Nigeria, and please, Tinubu has never declared himself the Minister of Petroleum. I haven't seen it. He has never called himself the Minister of Petroleum. But these are the issues the National Assembly should pay attention to instead of digging sensational news without having understanding of the concept of joint venture.
Thank you.
Okay, so now let's speak about, what the next steps are. The National Assembly has given them 7 days ultimatum. What do you think happens, within the next 7 days? What do you expect to happen after the next 7 days?
Well, I don't think it as an issue. Officials of the NNPC, yes, they've inherited whatever issues that were there. To be judged from the time they assume office, whether they are becoming transparent or accountable. Listen, I'm not here to defend NNPC because I think they have other issues that are more important than sensational news. In fact, and I'm going to answer your question, I really look at the PIA that the director should be talking to, even though they can call these people to testify, the director of NNPC Limited. The chairman of the board of directors, the chairman then that will invite the management team of NNPC to come and talk to them. So we cannot be selective in the way we interpret the PIA. We are picking and choosing. If I'm advising NNPC Limited, I'll get experts as witness to look at what. I'm not making myself available to them. I'm just telling you because I'm going to speak as an independent, not because I'm benefiting from anyone. Get experts to explain to the National Assembly if they are willing to listen. And that's why we try our best to educate the committees looking at the oil and gas industry for 7 years. Unfortunately, they change them as if they are changing suit in the process. Managing the oil and gas sector is not, it cannot be based on ad hoc. Because it's a long-term approach to developing your wealth for sustainable economic development. Yes, NNPC should explain the joint venture. It says that it's not difficult. What is the capex? What is the apex? We spend for each of the assets. When we have reviewed them, we have paid the joint venture partner for the work they have done over this period of time. We have paid them. I mean, if an external auditor can certify a report, I think the politicians will get experts to look at it and even be the one to educate them first before they confront the NNPC limit. And I want to talk about experts. I'm talking about people calling themselves experts without understanding of the management of that sector. We need to think about competence. You are fortunate now that you have an NNPC board, even though there are certain things I disagree with, that is technically competent to run. They are just there for maybe less than 6 months. Give them a chance, ask them questions without sentimentalism. You are creating a problem for a corporation that wants to go to the public. And at the end of it, you will see nothing in common of this 200 trillion, because in my opinion, it's something that is technically explainable. You have seen it. Particularly, the joint venture is beyond what you people are saying that that's business is not a business.
All right.
Ask them questions, and I'm sure that they will deliver it. Then you follow the process.
Okay, so we've taken some key pointers in this very short conversation that we are going to have. You've highlighted and explained the joint venture and how it works. Of course, ensuring that the NNPC is cut some slack, whether we like it or not. And then you've also highlighted the need for the Senate or the Assembly to ensure that they get the employment of professionals who really and truly understand the oil and gas sector. Permit me to use the word not mediocres, who would hide under the guise of being energy consultants or experts. So, I mean, I think we've taken that into heart. But my final question to you as we look to wrap up this conversation would be, Nigeria is going through a case of, dormancy. There's a case of what we call illegal waste, or better still, legal waste. And many have tagged it as a farce. I'm talking about the Port Harcourt refinery in Eleme River State. I'm sure you're one of those who equally took the news the bittersweet way when they said it had started working in November 2024. Currently, we're back to moribund situation. It's been shut down for repairs. What's your take on the announcement that was made a few months back, particularly in November, that the Port Harcourt refineries is back and running, and yet we've gone back to a state of comatose? Are we ever going to hold the perpetrators to account? And just share us your thoughts as well.
Again, thank you. Listen, if a refinery is going to be profitable, there are two things that are important. One is the price of crude oil. Two, the capacity utilization of the refinery. What we had before, when you say it's operational, is underutilizing the crude that you put in. And the normal thing for commercial institutions to look at, if I'm putting barrels into my refinery, and I'm not getting more than 100 barrels in value, then there's value destruction. And to me, that's what they have seen. Now, we have to remember that refinery is old. Technology has evolved. And the yield from the refinery is so important to have profitable margin. So this is limited in the board. I think, wow, we need to evaluate our investment to see whether value is added on. Again, you can say that I'm talking idealism, but that is the way the business is run. You don't destroy value when you are making investment decision, and that's what you've done. I will not expect professionals to come and declare that a refinery that has not worked for many years is now working. That would be a lie. That would be professionally unethical. And I try to get as much opinion from people to see, is it really working? Yes, but the utilization rate is too low to continue to operate it. And that's why they have to shut it down. Maybe because to have a refinery that was built in 1890-something, and it's still working. If you go to the US, I think since 1976, nobody has built a new refinery. So you keep building them. The lifespan on a refinery project is renewable. It's not like drilling a well. You just like sensationalism, things that don't matter, instead of paying attention to things that matters, that will make on the street to get a job. Give them a benefit of a doubt. They are professionals. They are professional ethics. Don't make Nigerian professionals look as if they are not good for anything. Listen, I just want to for somebody for the place because if it fails, there's a value can derive from it. That's the way Nigerians should be scouting for professionals instead of condemning them. And I want to quickly take your time to talk about Dangote and the marketers about political. Listen, you have a monopoly for many years with NNPC and sold in Russia petroleum product. Not adding final 650,000 barrels per day throughput, pushing to have a 90% utilization rate. And if the refinery is applying a vertical integration approach to reduce cost, improve efficiency, and keep the price. We are afraid of it. You not marry, you know what I'm going to do with your wife, 30 years from the you don't think I'm married, and your children not married. Let the fear of the drive you crazy when you have regulators that have authority to make sure that anti-competitive behavior is illegal. Yes, there's fear of the possibility of dominance of Dangote in the downstream sector. Get there. For now, competition is what we want in the downstream sector. And Dangote is offering that. The regulators must just step up the plate to make sure that the anti-competitive behavior did not defeat the objective of the PI competitive downstream sector. Please, come to this industry. Look for competent hands to manage it. Otherwise, value will continue to be destroyed. After 60 years, we are still struggling. The economy like the Middle East, economy like Saudi Arabia, and the capacity to do that is there. Where was China in 1992 compared to Nigeria?
All right.
Let us the cost of governance and stop this fishing for sensational news.
All right.
And I'm
Professor Wumi Iledare, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. I'm sure that the Senate is paying attention. In another few days, I think 6 days now, we'll know what the next steps are regarding this matter. But thank you for your time with us this morning. It's always a delight.
There's always any time for public education. But I speak for myself, not for any institution that I
completely understand that. Thank you for pointing that out. Have a wonderful rest of the day, sir.
All right.